No cream. Get some cream for my coffee. How you doing there? Morning. Morning. I don't know, maybe that one there. Let's see, this guy. Just a little light cream, not too heavy. Just a little bit.
Can I help you?
Yeah, I'm trying to get a little cream in my coffee.
Oh, let me show you. Put your hand here.
Yeah?
And squeeze. Squeeze.
Let me see now, just like that?
Yep.
Squeeze. I thought I had the touch.
Do a butterfly.
All right.
If you can.
Ah, I got it. Yeah, I got it. I got it. Do I get the job?
No.
No. Welcome to another episode of Travels with Charlie, Vermont politics in real life. I'd like you to meet my guests for today. I don't know them all by name, but I do know these by name right here. Jen Lambert, who is the owner of Lambert Farm, along with our Secretary of Agriculture from Vermont, Anson Tebbetts. So welcome to Travels with Charlie, and thanks for being part of this conversation today. We're going to talk about the future of farming in Vermont. So Jen, you kind of break the mold of what we think of as a Vermont farmer. What got you into this?
I started as an after-school job when I was 15, and I really enjoyed other dairy farmers. I think dairy farmers are actually really supportive of strong females. Once I got in, I stayed with it because I really enjoyed it.
Jen's not doing this, to become really wealthy. She probably does it because she likes what she does. She's independent. Hello, kitty. And she's providing wonderful food, and it all begins with operations like this.
Anson, you grew up on a farm, and Jen, you're certainly doing it a lot differently than Anson did growing up. Anson did it the old way, and probably sat on a bucket and you pulled the teats, and now.
Now hold on, no, I'm not that old.
Okay. But to go robotic, obviously you don't need as much help, and that's got to be a
Well,
big
it's really
boom.
hard to find people to
Yeah.
milk your cows. They're very odd shifts. When we knew we were going to start having kids, that's when we got really serious about putting the robots in. Robots are the future for many farms.
And one of the things that you can't see by looking around here, this is an organic farm. So obviously there's a premium on organic. What was your decision in going organic?
That was a choice that I made, that I needed to either create an organic farm or find one that was already in business, because I ran the numbers over and over and over again, and as a young person starting out, it was the only way it was going to cash flow. When you're a first generation farmer, you need that premium or you're just not going to make it.
The consumer now wants to know more about what's happening on a farm than they ever have wanted to know. I mean, they want to know the name of Jen's cows.
To farm in the future, you need to be open with everybody, open with the public, let them know what's going on in the farm, be open with the state. That is the way it needs to be.
Make no mistake about it, every farm in the state is heavily regulated.
Right.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, they're regulated on the quality of how they produce their milk and sanitation. The new avenue that everyone is in the middle of is water quality. Farmers have to tell the state how they're going to spread their manure, when they're going to spread their manure, how it's going to be spread. They have to have a plan.
A lot of farmers, Anson, you can certainly comment on it, feel that they're being targeted in terms of the manure control, the manure pits. It can be costly to build a manure pit. Obviously, they're in place to help the environment, but it's also at the detriment of putting a farmer out of business, isn't it?
And I think we're at the point now where I think the new rules, the big change under Act 64 was a couple years old, and it's just another thing that farmers are having to deal with on a more formal basis. For the most part, they've been doing it for a long time, but this has been formalized, and there are rules and there are regulations.
And that's why we need to keep that communication line open. Like this spring, we had so much snow. Nobody could get out on the fields because we have a no spreading on snow law. And so pits were overflowing and farmers were in panic. And I think that made some people at the state realize that, like, hey, we need a backup plan for if we have crazy weather.
Last year it snowed on November 1st. It did not leave until, the hills here in Washington were probably, I don't know, was it May? I mean, so you're trying to manage manure from November 1 to the middle of April. Really difficult, challenging things, and hoping none of it would get to a waterway. And our farmers had to adapt, they had to change, they had to communicate with us. Many of them did.
Jen, you've had the farm for 10 years now.
Yep.
What sort of changes have you seen? That's a short period of time when you consider the number of years that dairy farming has been in Vermont. What sort of changes have you seen in the last 10 years? Some that you like, some that you don't like?
We do get around and see a lot of other farms and talk to people in their milk houses, and I'm worried that a lot of farms are on their last generation. And the other thing I see in the dairy industry is a lot of depression. I don't see a lot of people encouraging their kids to take over the farm. And then some kids who grew up on farms just plain don't want to take over their farm. They've seen their parents struggle their whole lives. They've seen their bodies broken down from working so hard.
It's hard work. So as I mentioned, this is a land trust, so it'll always be a farm into the future. But what about the farms that want to sell? They want it to stay. It's not a land trust, but they would want it to stay as a farm. And then somebody goes to the bank, or I don't even know where you go. Jen, you can talk about that. Where do you go to get a loan? And I can't imagine the bank's going, oh, sure, you want to run a farm? How much do you need?
No, banks
not
are
that easy,
very hesitant to lend anybody money for cows and equipment. When we started, I went to a few different banks and I told them my history of being in the dairy industry and milking cows since I was 15 and going to 2+2, going to UVM, going to VTC. All that amounted to a whole lot of nothing.
They weren't impressed.
They weren't impressed. Yeah. They want cash.
I think probably, Jen, the biggest struggle people have is getting that capital they need, either to, start their operation or expanding, or
if you're a first generation farmer, that's the most difficult because you have nothing.
Who helped you, Jen? Can I ask?
Family friend who was a dairy farmer for years, and he is my mentor, and he just saw something in me, and he saw me working for another farm, and he said, you need to own your own cows. I'm going to finance these cows for you. And the farmer that was here rented the farm to us for years. And what that did is it gave me a history. I was able to go with a concrete, already happening business plan and say, hey, look, I'm cash flowing. This is what we've been doing. And then with the help of Land Trust, because we still couldn't afford the mortgage, we were able to finally buy the farm.
You don't regret this? You're 10 years into it now?
I'm starting to have some doubts, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Because these last 2 years, organic milk price has taken such a huge hit. We're also on quota. So not only are we restricted by a low milk price, we're also restricted on how much milk we'll actually get paid for.
Are you hopeful that that'll change, Anson, in the future? I mean, it has to. It sounds like it. If it doesn't, people like Jen will cease to exist owning farms.
We can hope that somewhere along the way that, in what happened with organic, it became a commodity, much like the conventional. This is what the farmers are up against. They do not know what they're going to get paid until a month after they deliver their product. Think of any other industry in the world that does
no other
that.
business would do that.
No other business.
No.
But that's the federal system. It's been around since the 20s, 30s. No one understands it, but that's the system. It has to be a federal system. Vermont can't go it alone. See, the whole issue the farmers are in is there's too much milk out there. We at the state are trying to change the conversation where we need to manage the growth of dairy so there's not as much out there.
The program that we're using right now is not right. It's probably not even ethical because so many people are really struggling. Even people with low debt that paid their farms off years ago. So these cows get milked whenever they want. They line up outside, and then once the door opens, they enter. Shuli's gonna come in and get milked right now. She's kind of looking at us like, why is there a bunch of people in here?
Yeah. Smile for the cameras.
She's eating her grain.
Yeah.
Arm goes under. Brushes turn on.
Washer. And no one's fighting out there. They're all standing in line. It's like, it's not my turn. It's like they all know.
They're all waiting.
Is there any kind of hierarchy here? Like, you know,
There
Ray
is.
goes before the other ones?
There are some boss cows out there.
Yeah.
That when they come over,
The other ones move out of the way.
They move.
Yeah. So Anson, sometimes I really wonder if the feds, if Washington, D.C. gets what's going on in little old Vermont. Just recently, remember with the Vermont maple syrup, they wanted it labeled
Common sense.
added sugar.
Right, but
and it's like, there's no added sugar. And it's like, and they insisted that it had to be on there. And everyone that grew up in Vermont and knows what maple syrup is, and finally, I don't know, somebody convinced them. And
3,000 people commented.
Yeah.
Probably most of them Vermonters said this is, the common sense has to prevail.
Yeah.
And the FDA got it. We got it changed off the table, so that did prevail. When it comes to dairy, it's really complicated because we're dealing with regions.
Yeah.
For the most part, agriculture is not partisan. You're dealing with regions, and sometimes regions can't get together on one policy.
Yeah.
And that's what dairy farming has struggled with. They're always competing against sort of like that one size fits all, and that's sometimes where you get in trouble.
As we talk about the future of farming, and most of it's been obviously, the discussion has been on dairy. Jen, you have a dairy farm here, but at some point, cannabis is going to be a crop that's going to be grown in Vermont. Will that be a brand, the Vermont brand? Have you thought about diversifying, Jen?
I'm a little skeptical of the hemp. What I'm nervous about is when it becomes federally accepted, that the same thing was with the dairy. We're going to be competing with out west.
Little old Vermont competes
Little old
with,
Vermont competing with large scale. We have the upper hand right now, but I don't think it's going to last.
And Jen's absolutely right. If we're going to do hemp, we've got to do it so it's not an industrial. So we've got to figure out, it's got to be like our artisanal cheeses. So it's got to be a niche. It's got to be high quality. And that's, Jen's absolutely right. We're not going to compete against Kentucky or New York where it's going to be,
we have such a short growing season, and our weather is so erratic. Long term, 10, 20 years from now, I think Vermont could be a great place to farm because we do have water. And water rights is becoming more and more of a volatile situation out west. Right now we're competing with desert farmers, and they're being able to undercut us on top of paying water, but they're gonna have to be competing with more and more people for that water. And I think eventually this is gonna be the place to farm.
Yeah.
But we gotta make it from here to then. So we need to keep the farms that we have here.
Once again, thanks to my guests on Travels with Charlie, Secretary of Agriculture, Anson Tebbetts, and Jen Lambert from the Lambert Farm. All of the guests on Travels with Charlie get parting gifts today.
Oh my gosh.
We have butter from Vermont Creamery. How about that? This is cultured butter.
Thank you so much.
Unlike the host, who's not cultured at all. Everybody gets butter. There you go. I'll see you in my travels.
Share what's on your mind. It's time well spent talking president. Though we may not agree, let your thoughts run free. You can have your turn.